Well, thank you for joining us. So for those of you in the room, we are live streaming this online, and we're going to have a recording of it available on our website as well. So because of that, the online recording won't be able to hear questions if you ask them during the presentation. So what I'm going to ask is that we can hold the questions till the end, and then we'll stop the recording, and then we'll be able to have that conversation a little bit more easily. But welcome, I'm Eric Brown. I am the Assistant Public Works Director for Gilbert. I oversee the utilities that we're going to discuss today. We're going to outline the proposed utility rates, the background of what these utilities actually do, as well as the needs for these utility rate increases. So we're going to start with some descriptions of some critical projects that have to happen very soon and are the driving force behind the rates. There will be consequences for our public safety, for our ability to sustainably operate our water and wastewater systems, and consequences for the environment if nothing is done in a timely manner for these projects. The first one you can see up there is the Sunoki Wash. That wash is a regional stormwater conveyance infrastructure that travels through the southern part of Gilbert. It's one major project within the Environmental Compliance Fund that we're going to need to do in the very near future to rehabilitate that wash. The riparian preserve that you see in the middle and in the lower right-hand corner, there's a project within the Wastewater Fund that is going to do better utilization of the riparian preserve for our reclaimed water recharge, which is very important for our water supply and the sustainability of Gilbert's operations. So today we're going to share the rate recommendations for you, our customers. These are the recommendations that are going to be presented at our council meeting on February 21st at 6:30 p.m. For any customers that have questions, you can send an email to utility.rates@gilbertaz.gov, and we will respond back to you with the answers to those questions. So, let's take a look at a comparison of a residential utility bill for the town of Gilbert. Your utility bill has 4 utilities on it. Likely, very likely, most customers have 4 utilities. That's water, wastewater, environmental services, which is our recycling and trash utility. And then the last one is environmental compliance, which is mostly stormwater focused. When we do regional comparisons across different cities, we compare the bill with those 3 utilities of water, wastewater, and trash, because those are the most similar utilities across the valley. And then we do a projection based on average water use and average sewer use. And you can see that Gilbert's charges for those services are the second lowest in the valley. We're only behind Chandler as far as affordability for similar services. We just like to keep that in mind that for about $78, you're getting 3 utility services every month. So when we talk about the size of these utility rate increases, it just gives you a little bit of an idea of the relative ratio in comparison to the overall bill. Towards the end of the presentation, I will show this graph again, but with the recommended rate increases on it, and so you can see where we'll stack up among our regional cities. All of the data that supports the rate increases are on our website, gilbertaz.gov/utility rates. And you see that red circle or oval in there. That is the rate study report. It shows all of the fund balances, the expenses, as well as the revenues under the existing rates, as well as the future planned rate increases. You might be thinking, didn't we just do a rate increase? We started paying more in April or May this past year. We did do that. Gilbert council did approve rate increases for the water and environmental services residential, that's the trash and recycling utilities. So that was 2 of the 4 utilities that are on your bill. This year, we are looking at the other 2, so wastewater and environmental compliance. Town council guided staff to take that approach to not increase all 4 utilities all at once. The goal there was to minimize the impact to our customers. And so by alternating years with these rate increases, we'll spread out the cost and the impact of these rate increases. That was with the customer in mind. Okay, before we move on to the next slide, I want to talk about what an enterprise fund is and how that is different from general government services. So these utilities that we're describing are completely separate financial entities within the town of Gilbert. So the wastewater fund has its own revenue source and its own expenses. Those revenues are not subsidized by taxes, and they don't pay for any general government services like streets or police or parks. The revenue from your utility bill goes to support the operations, maintenance, repair, and replacement of that utility. Okay, so if you imagined a little bit like your power bill, you might have APS or SRP as your power provider. You're paying for that utility service. You're not paying for anything outside of that utility. That's what the utility rates are for, okay? So these are separate financial entities. And that was important for us to understand that separation because while there may be government services that the town offers that you do not use, we are only charging a fee for the service that you do use in this instance. And we're not paying for the support of any of those other government services through the cost of that fee. Another common question that we'll get is, all of this growth is causing these rate increases, right? And the answer to that question is no. And this slide is an attempt to explain how growth pays for growth. We charge impact fees, or also known as system development fees, to new development when it occurs. And the fee that we charge is calculated and assessed based on the expansion-related improvements to the utility that are necessary to serve that new development. So what that means is that if you were to develop on a corner of an intersection, let's say you put in a new gas station, the water utility needed to have capacity within its system in order to meet the needs of that gas station. So we charge a system development fee for the building of the infrastructure to serve that need. We do not operate the system with those funds. We cannot legally. So anytime we have to expand our system to meet the needs, sometimes we've expanded it in anticipation of those needs, right? Like we don't build a water line for every brand new development. We build one water line, and sometimes that last corner doesn't develop for a long time. We've had the capacity there, we've held it, but we are waiting to be reimbursed for that capacity through that system development fee. So in this way, growth is required to pay for its own expansion of the system. So we don't use those fees for operating the system or for anything non-growth related, like repair or replacement of the infrastructure once it is built. Now we'll contrast with the rates and the user fees that you're charged on your monthly bill, okay? Those user fees are assessed based on the level of service that you receive from the town. So in a water system, that's based on the size of your water meter and then the amount of water used. In the wastewater system, it's based on whether or not you have service with us for a resident. If you don't have it, obviously we don't charge you that fee. We develop a cost of service model and a rate study report, and that is on our website. So the costs that we include in the model are the operation and maintenance of that system, the commodities that we need in order to make that system work, like electricity or chemicals, and then the repair and replacement of that system. So when in a wastewater system, when a sewer line wears out, we set aside money in order to replace that asset. And then any time that we will take out debt, like a bond, in order to do a large infrastructure project, that debt service has to be paid back through the rates. We do not use those rates to expand the system to accommodate new users. That is only paid for through system development fees. And again, I just want to restate that we don't support any general government services like police, fire, parks and recreation. So now that we understand the difference between growth and our monthly utility rates, let's dive a little bit deeper into the components within that utility fund that you do pay into every month. So we collect your payments every month, and it goes into our utility fund. It goes into 3 different locations within that fund. The first one is operations and maintenance activities. These are the things that you would think of when running a utility. For example, in the wastewater system, we have to operate a wastewater plant in order to clean and purify your wastewater. We have to clean sewers in order for that water to actually get to our wastewater plant without backing up, and then maintaining that infrastructure to keep it in good working condition. Those costs are steadily rising. Just like your costs at home, we are not exempt from inflation. Chemicals cost more for us. Chlorine for your pool costs a lot more. We use chlorine within our system. It costs a lot more for us. We have to recover those costs in order to make sure that we can continue to offer that service. The next kind of bucket of money that we use is in what we call one-time expenses. So this is new equipment, new operations and maintenance capital that isn't replacement and is not due to growth. So something like an odor and corrosion control facility that was not original to the design of the utility, that is paid for through the utility rates. And that's a one-time project to construct that facility. Those costs go up and down every year based on how many projects we have to build and what kinds of things have come up within our operations over the previous year. This is our main lever that we have to delay rate increases. So the first bucket is operations and maintenance. There's nothing really there that we can cut in order to maintain that service. This one is essentially what we're doing is we're delaying those quality of life improvements. So I described an odor corrosion control facility. I think we've all driven through Gilbert in various places and we've smelled the sewer. An odor control facility, one of its aims is to reduce that odor, that nuisance odor. The longer we push off those projects, the longer we have to deal with the odor within Gilbert. The implication for that, unfortunately, is that we are delaying necessary improvements to the system. And those improvements not only are a quality of life, but they are something that extend the useful life of the infrastructure. And if we delay doing that, it's kind of like delaying oil changes in your car. You can get by for several months beyond the 3,000 or 5,000 miles that is typical, but at some point, you've saved that $40 that cost, but now you've ruined your engine, and now you have to replace the engine at $5,000, $10,000. And so that's what happens with our infrastructure. It is very costly for us to replace it. And so what we try to do is do excellent maintenance and keeping the useful life at a longer term so that we can lower the overall cost of ownership for our customers. The last kind of bucket of money that we fund through utility rates is our repair and replacement fund. This is a fund with a sub-fund within the utility. where we transfer money at a fixed rate in order to repair or in some cases replace large pieces of infrastructure. I'm gonna do a little bit more discussion on the following slides so that we can dive down deep in what that is and why it's very important for you, our customers. So a repair and replacement fund serves to fund infrastructure rehabilitation or replacement when assets wear out, or when the utility accrues for the future rehabilitation and replacement needs of that utility. So we have our council has developed a policy statement regarding that repair and replacement fund, and it is to provide for a fiscally responsible infrastructure repair and replacement program that will enable Gilbert to maintain service delivery to its residents. It supports the stewardship of public assets and the achievement of established standards and regulatory compliance. All of that is to say, it is the lowest cost of ownership in order for us to maintain a strong repair and replacement fund so that we can still deliver the quality of services for you and to protect the environment. The expenses within a repair and replacement fund are what I would call lumpy. So imagine replacing a mile of sewer line. That might cost $10 million. We don't have to do that every year, but we do have to do that. And so this graph kind of illustrates the age of our infrastructure and when its useful life expires and when we have to go back and replacement and the associated cost with that. And you can see that it increases over time because a lot of Gilbert was built in the last 40 years. And generally, utility infrastructure will last longer than that. But if you imagine a sewer line might have a useful life of 50 years. If it was built 40 years ago, we only have 10 more years before we have to go and replace that. We can't wait till that 10th year and then go and ask for the money. Your utility bill would skyrocket in that year. So what we do is we essentially run a calculation where we understand the useful life and the cost to repair that asset, and we divide it out over the useful life, and then we collect an increment of that every year, and we set it aside for that use. But in that way, we set aside a constant amount of money every year, and in some years we'll use more than that, and in some years we'll use less than that, but your utility bill will not change in any of those years. That's what the functionality of a repair and replacement fund. But why is it important to invest in infrastructure or reinvest in infrastructure? You may all be familiar with the crisis in Jackson, Mississippi. But as a reminder, what is going on there is that the water system has been failing for many years. And it's culminated with a boil water notice for months for their customers, if they could even get water out of their tap. They have recently declared that the water is safe to drink. But if your utility had told you for months and months that you had to boil water in order to use it, how much confidence would you have in them when they told you it was safe? Probably not very much. The state of Mississippi has actually stepped in to operate the utility, and now the federal government has actually even taken an interest in operating the utility. So that's kind of the background, but the less familiar part is how they got into that situation in the first place. It was due to many years of skipped reinvestment into the utility, not keeping it in good working condition in the favor of keeping utility rates low. There's a quote here that I'll read from someone involved in this. This crisis is due to decades and decades and decades, possibly 30 years or more, of deferred maintenance, a lack of capital improvements made to the system, a lack of human capital, and a lack of a workforce plan that accounted for the challenges that our water treatment facility suffers from. They took the easy road of deferring maintenance and reinvestment into their utility in order to keep rates low. The long-term cost of that is now coming due, and the community is suffering from it. Gilbert has a City of the Future initiative. You may have heard about it. The entire idea of the City of the Future initiative is that we don't look only at short-term gains at the expense of the long-term viability and thriving ability of our community. Our goal is to not start down that short-term thinking path that happened many years ago and has culminated in this crisis. So the establishment and the continual funding and use of our operating and repair and replacement funds and our utilities is a key component of our long-term strategy to make sure Gilbert is a great place, not just today, but also in the future. So there's a potential that in our annual budget and our revenue discussions that we miss the point of what we're tasked with doing. And that's to provide these basic services for the community in perpetuity, not just today. And that the best possible level of governance for this is at the local level. But if we don't perform and we don't continue, we may be in that situation where the community loses that local control, as we've seen in Jackson, Mississippi. So that's a little bit of background about utility funds and the importance of all of the various components within that. Now I'm going to talk about what it actually takes in order for us to provide those level of services for our residents and what you all have come to expect from us. I'm going to first start with the Environmental Compliance Fund. This is something that you're probably not that familiar with. It's not like water service, where everybody gets it every day. Our environmental compliance team is very small, but they're mighty. They take care of all of our stormwater infrastructure. They maintain all of our air quality, compliance, and enforcement permits as well. Some of these are unfunded federal mandates that are required of us. And because of that, our town council developed this environmental compliance team and the fund several years ago in order to meet these needs. Let's take a look at some stormwater infrastructure because this is not all that familiar to many of us. There is a lot of stormwater infrastructure within Gilbert, and it's spread everywhere. You might not even notice it, but when I show you pictures of it, you'll be like, oh yeah, I see that stuff all the time. A lot of our beautiful parks are also stormwater infrastructure. They are retention basins for us. We've got a lot of stormwater pump stations out there that we utilize during rain events. There's a couple of channels and washes throughout Gilbert, regional stormwater conveyance system. And then we've got hundreds of thousands of linear feet of stormwater pipe. And the last one here is underground storage tanks scattered throughout all the community in order for us to make sure that we are able to retain and detain that stormwater when we do get big rain events. All of this infrastructure is aging. And just like all of us, as we age, it gets a little bit more expensive for us to maintain. This stormwater infrastructure is everywhere in our community. There is no place in Gilbert that you can go that you do not get affected by this infrastructure. But it wasn't always well maintained. We learned back in 2014, if you've been around since then, there was the remnants of a hurricane that came through in October of 2014 and caused widespread flooding throughout the entire valley. We identified 50 locations at that point within Gilbert that had major flooding due to that storm. But it wasn't just because of the storm, it was because the stormwater infrastructure that was meant to drain and move that water away was not well maintained. We did not have a stormwater maintenance and operations team at that time. So we decided we needed to develop one because the community was suffering from that. So we did. And our stormwater team that was established and funded in 2018 has been doing what we would call routine maintenance ever since then. And you can see the effects of that on that stormwater infrastructure, what it looks like before and after it has been cleaned. We have a team of 2 people that do this for the entire town of Gilbert. that clean, repair, inspect, and maintain our stormwater infrastructure. So we repair things as we find them, and we are in the process of developing a long-range infrastructure plan to guide us for the best overall maintenance and level of service for the community. When we developed this fund in 2018, we understood that we had a lot of work ahead of us. We did not understand the full scope of what that would entail. We knew that we had to do some maintenance on these washes and on the stormwater channels, and that we had deferred a lot of maintenance on our stormwater infrastructure, but we didn't know to what extent. We took our best estimate at it and developed the environmental compliance fee at that time. So council approved that fee that was charged every month for every utility customer. Since then, we have learned a lot. We've done a lot, but we have a lot more to do. I'll describe a few projects that we're going to have to do in the next several years in order to maintain the quality of life here in Gilbert. The first one is the Sunoki Wash restoration. We did an assessment in 2017 of Sunoki Wash, and that assessment came back not very good. You can see that picture on the top left, that bank of the wash is eroded away, and we've got orange construction fencing up there alerting folks that there is a safety hazard at the bottom of the bank. What happens with the Sunoki Wash is that regional stormwater conveyance, it moves water through the community from east to west, and then it eventually empties into the Eastern Maricopa floodway. When we have this type of erosion, it of course prevents water from moving at a quick pace, but it also erodes away and then develops standing water. And when we have standing water, we get mosquitoes, we get midge flies, we get all kinds of hazards for our public health. And you can see that in that middle picture and in the top picture on the right. So we've got a project that we have identified to restore the low flow channel in Sunoki Wash, as well as restore the banks to their original design. In relation to the size of the Environmental Compliance Fund, that project is very big. And when we presented the need to do this to the council in the spring, they said the most financially responsible thing for us to do would be to save up money in order to pay for this project in cash. And so that's one way that we've designed those rates, is to save up the money in order for us to do this project in the future, rather than take out debt and pay for it over a much longer period of time. Of course, there's consequences that happen if we don't do good maintenance on our stormwater infrastructure. And it's not just a short-term nuisance consequence, but there are public safety results as well. Imagine if you had a medical emergency and your neighborhood was flooded like this, and we tried to get an ambulance to you. We would be delayed for sure if we could get there at all. And so it's a public safety issue for us in order to make sure that we are able to navigate throughout our community, even during storms. With all that, you're probably now very, very well educated on what we do, and you want to probably get down to what does this all cost? So this graph shows a couple of things. The first thing is the orange bars. At the end of every fiscal year, we have got some leftover cash by design. That's called a fund balance. We are required by our council financial policies and by just good management principles to have a minimum fund balance based on the size of the fund and the operational needs. That minimum fund balance is depicted by that horizontal black line. So that's our target at the end of every fiscal year to at least have minimum fund balance. But in the case of saving up to cash fund something, we will of course have more than minimum fund balance. The orange bars show our fund balance at the end of every fiscal year under the current rate structure if we do nothing. Of course, we go negative by the end of fiscal year 2024. The yellow bars show what happens with that fund balance under the proposed rates. We typically do a 5-year rate plan. In the case of this fund, we're actually showing 7. The reason why is because in the 6th and the 7th year are those 2 large capital projects, Sunoki Wash and Hunt Highway Channel restoration. Those are large capital projects that council gave us the direction to save up money for and cash fund those. And so you see the big dip in the 6th year, and then of course in the 7th year in 2029, you see that fund balance goes below our minimum fund balance. We're going to revisit the rates every couple of years, so as we get closer to those projects, we will reevaluate both the cost of the project and whether the rates will support that project. So we've got some time between now and then to get a little bit finer resolution on those. So we're not totally concerned with fiscal 29 at this point. It's a long way away. But you can see that we'll at least be able to do the Sunoki Wash project in fiscal 28. So that's what happens with that fund. We'll deal with those fiscal year 25 and beyond in future years. Now, what is that actually going to cost to you, our customers? We currently charge $4.28 a month for the environmental compliance fee. Our recommended rate is $6.79 a month, so an increase of $2.51 per month. That will allow us to at least do the first of those capital projects and maybe more in the years beyond that. I'm going to take a moment here, and then we're going to move on to wastewater. Okay, so wastewater is the other utility that we are proposing a rate increase for this year. We have 78,000 plus residential customers that we receive their wastewater from. It flows through over 800 miles of pipe by gravity until it no longer can be economically done by gravity, and then we have to lift it. So we have to pump it up. And then eventually that goes to one of 2 wastewater reclamation plants within Gilbert, where we treat that water on your behalf. We purify it, and then we do one of 2 things with it. We can deliver that, what we call reclaimed water, out to large landscape customers like parks and HOAs and golf courses. We charge them for that service. Or we can recharge that water into the ground, thereby ensuring a good water cycle for us of sustainability, because on our water side, we'll pump that water out of the ground at a future date. All of those assets that the community has invested are valued at over $500 million. So this is a much larger fund already off the bat that you can tell. A lot of assets, a lot of maintenance goes into those assets, a lot of operations and maintenance every year, and repair and replacement on that. Similar to the stormwater infrastructure, this is spread throughout the community. There's very few places in Gilbert, although there are some, that do not have wastewater service. The vast majority of Gilbert does. There's a lot of pressures, cost pressures on our fund. The Greenfield Water Reclamation Plant and the Neely Water Reclamation Facility are owned by Gilbert. In the case of Greenfield, we own that alongside the City of Mesa and the town of Queen Creek. We're all partners in those facilities. Gilbert contracts out for the operation of those 2 facilities. In the case of Greenfield, the City of Mesa actually operates it on the behalf of all 3 cities. Neely Water Reclamation Facility is operated by a third party that we have a contract for. The cost of operating those facilities is going up significantly, particularly as they age. We've got a lot of minor maintenance issues that we have to pay for out of utility rates. And then, of course, we have to do capital projects to repair and replace those on those facilities as well. Chemicals and inflation is hitting us as well. Energy is a big portion of what we use to operate that facility, those facilities, and just like your energy bill, ours are going up as well. And then we're making significant infrastructure reinvestments, and then as well as security investments into those facilities. But I want to put a little bit of an actual face on what these projects are that we're doing. One of them is at the Riparian Preserve. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to go a little bit deeper into this. The Riparian Preserve is actually a water reclamation facility. We use it to send our reclaimed water to recharge our aquifer. So there are 7 ponds there that we send water to recharge the groundwater basins. And we do that through that structure in the middle, where all that pink or purple spaghetti emanates from is the distribution box structure. So the purple is showing the pipes that are underground that emanate from there. We identified in 2012 that that structure was undersized. We could not make full use of both the Riparian Preserve as a resource and the reclaimed water that we produce every day. And we needed to expand that structure in order to make full use of our water resource. It was identified as a critical need in 2012. We have not been able to pay for that project since then. It has been continually deferred as a project in order to make our utility ends meet. As you all are probably aware of, we're facing reductions of our Central Arizona Project water supplies due to the drought on the Colorado River, and utilizing our existing water resources is vitally important in order for us to make sure that we're a sustainable community into the future. And our reclaimed water is an existing water resource. So the riparian structure expansion is one project that we had in mind that we would do under these new rate increases. Another one, we already kind of talked about odor within Gilbert, but this is a very specific project that we have set our sights on to do. I'm gonna use a laser pointer here. If you look up here, this is Guadalupe Road, and Greenfield Road is the north-south here. So we're just east of that. We have designs to build an odor control and corrosion control facility at this location. What does that facility look like? Well, its purpose is to inject chemicals into the sewer so that we can prevent the formation of those corrosive gases. The corrosive that destroys our pipes from the inside, and they're also an odor issue for us. That's the kind of nuisance for us. We would inject chemicals into the sewer line that runs north and south until it gets to the Western Canal, and then it runs through the heart of Gilbert and downtown Gilbert all the way to our Neely Water Reclamation Facility. That sewer line is 36 inches. It's large. It's the largest sewer line within Gilbert. And it is not reaching it's not going to reach its expected life cycle because we do not have corrosion control happening on that pipeline. So this is an instance where we've learned this was not designed in the original utility. It probably should have been in order to make the longest life cycle for that. We identified that project many years ago, and it was slated for us to construct in fiscal year 2020, but it has again been delayed because of budget constraints. If the rates are approved, our plan was to construct this project in fiscal year 2024. These are just two of many projects that we have identified would have been supported by these rates. So what does this look like from a fund perspective? Same kind of chart as you saw earlier with environmental compliance, but the numbers are a lot bigger. So our fund balance on this utility would go below zero. It would go into the negative in 2024 under the existing rates. Our current plan would develop a balance over the 5 years, and we would be able to cash fund those critical capital improvement projects. We would not have to take out new debt in order to do them. The economy being what it is, we're seeing high levels of inflation. We are going to revisit this utility again every other year at Council's guidance, and we'll look at those fiscal years 2025 and beyond at a later date. So what does this look like for you, our customers? Well, currently, if you're a resident, you receive a flat rate fee of $24.73 a month. That would go up by $8.02 to $32.75. So this would be in addition to the $2.51 earlier. So total impact for our residential customers is $10.53 per month. Our non-residential customers have a slightly different rate structure. So that's a little bit different. They pay a fixed fee monthly, a base fee, that would rise by $5.26 per month. And they are also charged a flow rate fee based on the amount of water they use inside their business. So they've got a separate water meter for their indoor water use, and then a separate one for outdoor water use. They're only charged sewer based on that indoor water use. And then our reclaimed system is within the wastewater fund. And so those rates are also going to be increasing. So our reclaimed water customers have a monthly base fee, $15 right now. That would rise by $4.74 a month. And then the individual 1,000-gallon increment rates would rise accordingly, depending on which of the 3 customer types they are. So these are our large landscape customers: HOAs, parks, and golf courses. So these are critical investments that we need to make into the infrastructure and into the operations of the utilities. But we did recognize that this would be a large impact to, in particular, those reclaimed customers, because they are large water users. It might not look like much for a 14 cents per 1,000-gallon increase, but those customers can use upwards of 1 million gallons a month. So we knew that could be a financial impact to them. And so we tried to give them as much notice as possible early on. In the spring, when we briefed our council and they gave us direction to do the rate study and progress on this timeline, we notified those reclaimed customers and published information on our website for them. We sent them out letters and we directed them to that website so that they could plan as much as they could ahead of time with their budgets. So I'm going to bring back that residential bill, and you can see the comparison where we would stack up among our peer cities. You can see that Gilbert will, under the proposed and recommended rates, we would leapfrog the city of Peoria for the 3 main utilities: water, sewer, and trash. However, we would maintain that the level of service that Gilbert provides and the value you receive in exchange is incredibly competitive with the rest of our customers. So if you are a non-residential customer, I would direct you to the Gilbert Utility Rates website, where we have a bill calculator that will help you calculate that rate impact for the sewer on your utility bill. It's worth noting that over the last 13 years, Gilbert has had 2 utility rate increases. We've actually done 2 decreases on our environmental services. Our trash and recycling in that same time frame. You can see that we went a very long time between 2009 and 2018, which was our last rate increase for wastewater and the creation of that environmental compliance fee. And then it's been 5 years since wastewater environmental compliance have again had a rate increase. That is a very uncommon thing for utilities. And we've had to do some drastic rate changes because we have waited so long. Council has taken the direction that we need to take the best practice of aligning rates every other year so that we can not have to hopefully do as drastic of rate increases in the future. In addition, they've said, let's do 2 of the 4 utilities each year. So we'll do, this past year, water and trash services were increased. Let's skip them this year. We'll do wastewater and environmental compliance. And then next year, we'll look at water and trash again. The goal there is to spread out the impact for our customers so that they're not hitting all 4 in one year and then none in the other year. So I'm almost on my last slide here. This is the next steps. Just a little bit of history. That March 3rd council briefing at the open meeting, the council financial retreat, where they gave us direction to complete this rate study. At the December 13th council meeting, they directed us to publish a notice of intent to raise fees and rates. And at that meeting, they also set the public hearing for February 21st, when they will consider adoption of those rates. If they do that, those rates will become effective April 1st. So you would see that on your first utility bill in April. With all of that, I'm going to come back to this slide. For our folks that are online, if you have questions, you can submit them to the email on the screen, utility.rates@gilbertaz.gov. We will get back to you as quickly as we can on those questions. I'd also recommend taking a look at our utility rates website, gilbertaz.gov/utility rates, where we have the rate study that's published there, which has a lot of the financial background in there, as well as the bill calculator if you're a non-residential customer. But with that, we're going to stop the recording, and then for those of us in the room, if you have questions, we can have a conversation about that. We're good? Okay.